David, welcome to the show. It's so good to talk to you again.
Yeah, my pleasure. Really happy to be here and looking forward to our conversation.
So this will be fun because I was reading over your LinkedIn and I realized we've got some kind of like funny mutual connections and crossovers. You've worked with InfluxDB, right? And Equinix.
Yeah, I led the DevRel team at Influx for 2 years and was a staff developer advocate for Equinix. Well, Packet, who turned into Equinix Metal at Equinix for a number of years as well. So yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because the only reason I bring up those two is because at draft.dev, one of my agencies, we work with both those companies and have worked with them a couple different times at different iterations. But I think it was all after your time there because I think that company kind of came later. But it's kind of funny, the crossover, the small world we live in.
I like to think that I was doing so great that when I left, they were like, shit, we need some content. And then you got a gig out of it.
That's right. That's exactly it, David. Yeah. It was just, David was just bringing in this irreplaceable aura to the company. I'm sure that we had to try to step into. No, it's great to talk to somebody else who's in the developer marketing space, and we'll definitely talk about that a bit because this is a unique area. And I know, let's get into Rawkode first. Let's talk about the business as it is today, and maybe give me a quick minute or two about how you got it started and off the ground.
The Rawkode Academy has actually been a thing for 5 years. I mean, as a YouTube channel, not as a business. I've just always enjoyed helping other people be successful. Every developer gig I've had for the last 20 years, I've always shied away from the product side and just spent far too much of my time hacking on tooling to make the team's lives easier. Like, I don't know what it is about me, but I love it so much. Now, how did it become a business? Well, I guess that's a kind of funny story. I used to work for Pulumi. I was a staff developer advocate there on a fantastic team and a fantastic product, and our engineers are amazing. However, and I don't want to go into too much details and throw any shade on them, I did not get along with the executive team very well. They were very unhappy with the fact that my YouTube channel was doing well and that my long-term plan was to do that. Words were said, we parted ways, and September 22, I quit. And I was like, shit, I have nothing lined up. And I don't know if it's true for all founders. There's never probably a right time to do it. But I was just like, you know what? I don't want to go back to a full-time employment. There were offers, but I was like, let's see if we can make this a business. So within a week, I had my first contract signed and ready to go. And that's been a bit of a whirlwind ever since.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay. I want to talk about that first contract, but I'll step back to what you first said there, which is that whole, is there ever a good time to just quit your job and go start a business? Because I think it's a good point. Like, a lot of people who are thinking about starting a company ask me this about how did you just decide to quit your job and go do this? It was just a really hard leap for a lot of people to make. Obviously, you had a little bit of traction under you, and that's probably what gave you some confidence that this could happen. But walk me through in your mind, David, how was that making that switch, and what was it? Super scary? Was it super easy? Was it like a no-brainer? I just have to do it? What were your thoughts?
Man, it was the worst week of my life. So, as I said, things they weren't going well at Plumie. I didn't see eye to eye with the CEO. We had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old at the time. I approached my wife and I was like, things aren't working out with this company. I want to quit. And she went, and do what? I was like, I think I can keep doing what I'm doing and I enjoy doing and make it a business. And she wasn't exactly on board. I mean, she was supportive, but, I've been doing developer advocacy for 10 years at that point. I was a software engineer for 20 years. Money was good. It was stable. We had just bought a relatively expensive house. We had 2 young kids. So she didn't want me to do it without having something lined up, but she was supportive. And if she hadn't been, then we probably wouldn't be talking. The Rawkode Academy wouldn't be where it is today. But I just says, I think I can make this work. And we had some leads at the time. So she was like, okay, pull on them. Let's see where we are in 3 months and then reevaluate. So yeah, I credit it to her being supportive. But yeah, I took those leads, I made it work, and I'm still doing this 2 years later. So
it's so big. That's such a huge topic that comes up a lot in both these podcast recordings I have here with other entrepreneurs, as well as in my other conversations with entrepreneurs. But that is having a supportive partner, spouse, or people around you that understand the level of just bullshit of having a job sometimes, and when you're just ready to kind of be done with it. I think it's really important. It's not maybe it is talked about plenty, but in sometimes people glorify the sort of the lone wolf story of entrepreneurs kind of going out on their own and just making it, hacking it away, working long nights and weekends. But like a lot of times those people are supported by spouses who either make money or help with childcare or at least let you spend your savings on this crazy idea, whatever.
It must be so difficult for people that aren't in tech, right? To look at what we're complaining about dancing like monkeys for our bosses for our paycheck, and we're willing to walk away because of X, Y, and Z. And most people really do hate their jobs, but they've got to stuck it up and do it. And I think I always keep that in the back of my head. You've got to really appreciate what we have sometimes, but also your mental health is so important. And for me, I couldn't put up with what was happening at Pulumi anymore. And I'm not going to say their name anymore because it's not about them. We had a difference of opinion, and that happens. It's fine. Like, they're not a bad company. There's some amazing people there. But for me, it was a decision I had to make. And it was hard. Like I said, 2 young kids. I have a wife. We had just bought a house. We're also financially responsible for her brother-in-law and her mum to a degree. And it's just like all of these things are things that are sitting there on your shoulders saying, you can't do this right now. This is not the right time. But yeah, you just got to make the plunge sometime. You got to have faith in yourself, trust yourself, and take it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that whole just kind of burn the bridge and go. And you figure it out as you go. So let's talk about that first contract, because I love first sales stories. To me, they're kind of one of the most fun things to geek out on, because to the people listening who are not yet entrepreneurs, they're going to be like, wow, it's just something they want to do someday, right? So this is like kind of the roadmap of how to do it. So I'm always curious for first sales. What was it like? You said you had some leads kind of lined up. I imagine people had reached out to you already about like either creating content for them or helping out with something or another, just because you were well known, you had a good YouTube channel. But like, what did that actually look like? How did it happen?
Yeah, so there were a few contributing factors. The first one is I don't want to toot my own horn too much, right? But I've always excelled at every company I've worked at. I've always done great work. I take a lot of pride in my work. And being able to go back to previous employers and have discussions was relatively easy for me because they all wanted to work with me again. At the same time, I was 2 weeks away from my first ever conference, Cube Huddle, which I organized in Scotland. And with that, I was already talking to companies about sponsoring that. In fact, they were already on board. The conference was happening. So those were leads that I could also be like, hey, thanks for sponsoring my conference. But, do you want to do something else over the next 12 months? Because I'm about to do this thing. And they were like, okay, let's talk about it. We've got budget. And at the same time, the third contributing factor, I don't have a huge YouTube channel, right? Even today, it's only 13,000 subscribers. But I have a very specific niche, right? I do not cater to all software developers. I cater to software developers with at least 7 or 10 years experience. And fortunately, people want to be a part of that audience, and the people want to promote to that audience. So there were already companies reaching out saying, hey, can you make content on our product? And I just started chasing those down, and I got lucky. My first contract came from a previous employer, that was with Equinix. But the second, third, fourth, and fifth contracts quickly followed, and that was through people that sponsored the conference and people that were already interested in working with the YouTube channel.
And so were those first contracts basically people sponsoring you to create a video, or was it you featuring them in a video? Was it videos that they would then post on their channel? Like I imagine, I know there's a lot of different ways to do this sort of content for hire, essentially. But what was your model?
It was really weird for me. I didn't know what the business was at the start, but the first 3 contracts, so I wouldn't just, say, oh, this is what I did for Equinix and that. But the first 3 contracts were all very different. There was a contract where it was just can you make content and put it on your YouTube channel and use our product? Yeah, sure, easy, done. There was also people wanted help with Kubernetes. So there was a consultancy part of my business where I was actually being a developer or a SRE for a company. And the other one was just a bit of everything, to be honest. They just wanted to work with me. So I did some helping them prioritize their roadmap, developer feedback on their product, and a little bit of content to boot. So I was kind of all over the place. My business didn't have a, this is what we do. It was if you give me money, I will help you in whatever way I can. Which I think if I were to sum up the story of my first 12 months, it was... I was just exchanging time for money, and that does not scale. It was a very difficult thing to come to realize because I was living the dream. I was working for myself. I was getting paid. But at some point you realize I should be doing this to give myself more time for other things, and I wasn't really delivering on that either. So
yeah, that is a fantastic realization and something that I would, double down on here. We definitely want to talk about that. I think it's interesting though that the thing you point out there is in the early days, the first few months, you're just kind of saying, "Hey, I'm out there and I'll do whatever, like I'll dance in front of the camera for you if you want for a few $1,000." But I think there's two ways to start a business, right? Like there's people who come into it with a very specific, this is what we offer for someone, and they have it all outlined and detailed. But I actually think it's a lot more common for successful entrepreneurs to start with more of a, like you had a I'm for hire approach of like, I've got some skills, I'll just see what the market wants, and then I'll go figure out a way to kind of productize it or turn it into something that I can actually sell over and over again. Did you know from day zero that's where it was going to go, or was it kind of something you realized along the way as you're sort of doing each of these contracts? They're each different, and it's just really hard to replicate.
No, I had no idea where it was going to go. The reason I decided to do this full time is because what I've enjoyed over the last 5 years has been making content on YouTube, has been me exploring what is now quite a vast and complex landscape, the cloud native landscape, right? There are so many tools, products, architecture, patterns that people struggle with. And Kubernetes is now at a point 10 years in of mass adoption, and people are still struggling with it. I still spend a lot of my time just on Twitter and Kubernetes Slack helping people, which is great. But as a business, it was definitely, I always thought making content would make me happy. But the problem is when you then have to make the content and you don't always get to control the narrative and the messaging and what those products are, it really suddenly starts to feel like work. Also, with my YouTube channel, I never had to edit things 14,000 times because I was happy with things not being perfect. Again, when there's a check crossing hands, people want perfect. It's not like, oh, you just edit it differently. Sometimes you're having to re-record things, and then you realize that the rate you're charging isn't enough because I'm like, oh, I charged it based on my time of doing it for myself. But when you're doing it for other people, those things take 3, 4, 10 times longer. People always, like, I go to conferences still speaking to people, and they're like, how long does it take to make a 30-minute video? And it could be a week, it could be a month. It depends on how much I need to learn, how much I have to plan, how many re-edits there are. Like, there's no golden rule there, and everything always takes a lot longer than you think at first. I
think you've discovered something that I hear from a lot of creatives. A very typical path in starting an agency or becoming a freelancer is, I like, let's say, art. I like to create art. I like design. I like to create, beautiful images and logos and things like that. So therefore, I'm going to put up a shingle and I'm going to become a freelancer who creates logos and designs and whatever for clients. And it's like, great. You think you're going to get paid to do what you love to do and people will appreciate your art. But in reality, you and I both know that client services are much messier than that. And your first project comes in and you think you've created the perfect logo on V1. And they say, well, it's great, but I saw this great font the other day called Comic Sans. Could you just do it in that instead? And it's like just immediately just starts tearing down and burning your design. And I feel like the same thing is true. I remember this in the early days of draft.dev, writing content for clients. Like, I thought I wrote a great article, made great points. The whole thing was comprehensive. And then all of a sudden it's like, but could you also say this? And I'm like, but it doesn't even make sense, and I'm trying, it's like an argument you can't win, right? And so, okay, so we all, any of us in agencies or services know this problem. How have you tried to go about fixing that now? Or what do how's your offering gotten standardized so that you can hopefully start to kind of alleviate some of that pain, I guess?
So the first thing is I set some values for myself, which I always used to think were absolute crock. Every company I worked at had values, right? And then when you work there, you're like, they don't mean anything. Nobody follows this crap. And my guiding light now is authenticity. If I can't demo your product in an authentic fashion where I am genuinely excited, I say no. I'm sorry, I took on too many contracts for not enough amount of money to smile and say, this is great, play with this, why? And it really behind the scenes, it's just, I'm just dead, I'm numb. So yeah, from now on is authenticity. And that's been a rule now for many months. And I don't sacrifice it for anything. So that's definitely helped. I actually put my new values on the website, so I can actually just cheat and look at them. But the first one is authenticity. The second one is organic content. I'm trying to move away from contrived things, where it's like, the perfect demo doesn't really exist. And if you contrive an environment to make it like that, you lose that authenticity as well, right? It doesn't make sense. And I found that as a consumer of content myself, right, I probably watch more content than I produce. I'm always learning myself. The minute I see that, it puts me off, and I really don't want people watching my content to struggle with the same. And then the third value is just embracing failure. Now, this is something I've fought a lot of clients with. They want me to remove things from live streams as well, which is wild, right? But when something goes wrong, they're like, oh, but we want people to see our product in the best possible light. And I'm like, true, but also I was using your documentation. I ran into a problem and then I showed them how to fix it. Like, that is more important because many people are going to hit these same pain points. You want them to have a solution and an answer, and then go and fix your doc so people don't hit it again. But we shouldn't be removing this stuff and showing people the happy path, because that's just not what development is. It removes a sense of realism from the content, and again, people will switch off. If you get 10 minutes in and it's just everything's going perfectly, like that, sometimes that can be great. But when that happens with me, you'll literally see me beaming going, I can't believe this. And when it's edited in a way that it doesn't seem real anymore, I think that detracts from the value. So yeah, those values are really important to me. They've shaped the way the company has grown and the clients that I work with, and probably the reason that I'm still doing this and I haven't just went back to a full-time job, because life would be easier with a full-time job. I'm not going to lie and say this is the easy life. It's far from it. There's a lot of constant battles and struggles, but I'm still enjoying it, which is great. So yeah, I don't even think I answered the question. I went on a different tangent completely.
I think that does, because I was kind of asking about how you make that transition from clients telling you to do all these crazy things that you're like, this is just not a good idea, or you're trying to, kind of get them on the right path. And so you're setting up values is one answer to that question. It's basically like putting a box around what we, the kinds of work we will do, the kinds of clients we will work with. And that helps you like sort of filter out the ones that are like, David, we just want you to be a dancing monkey in front of the camera, do what we say, and you can instead say, look, this is going to be authentic. It's going to be like, it's going to have some mistakes, and it's going to, like not be contrived. And so all those things help like point you in the direction. I think that's something, again, everybody's got their own way of solving that problem, but I think that's really an interesting approach. I also, I'll take a quick aside here and talk about developer marketing, because we've been, both of us, being that we know this field well, we dove right into the deep end, and we're throwing out Kubernetes and Palomi and Equinix and all those words and companies that nobody's ever heard of, right? So I'll step back here real quick. So developer marketing is an interesting little niche of marketing, and most of the people who work in it, or a lot of the people who work in it, are like David and myself. We have some software engineering, DevOps background, and we've actually done the technical work, and then we kind of get into the marketing side of things. It sounds like, David, you had taken roles that were actually in developer relations or developer marketing. These are kind of similar terms, and I won't get into the nuance differences because that's a whole different episode. But you were kind of familiar with this world before you even went out on your own. Did you really know how big and in demand it was, or was that kind of something you figured out as you got out here into the freelance side?
I don't think I understood the demand, but I definitely knew there was a need, before I did developer advocacy, relations, and marketing, I was a developer, right? And I know how hard it is. I've been through the struggle bus with Kubernetes. I've done that. And now I'm doing it with other technologies that pique my fancy, right? There's all this new Rust stuff. There's WebAssembly. There's server-side WebAssembly. There's microkernels, unikernels, micro VMs. Like, technology does not stand still. And what I've found is that every single developer in the world has signed up to this race that they didn't really sign up for. They've just been enrolled in it. They've been told, keep up or lose relevance, be unemployed. So I want to help make that easier. So I see a need. I see developers need help. And I'm a technology magpie. I want to play with every shiny new thing that comes out just because I feel that it makes me better. I learn new patterns. I learn new languages. I have a lot of fun. And if I can make content at the same time that helps people, that's great. But let's jump back to the developer marketing thing, right? This is also really, really tough because I don't even like to say developer marketing. I do have it on my website in one bit, and I hate it that it's there, but I haven't found a better term yet. That's when clients come to us. I don't know if you get this too with your businesses, right? But the first question they ask, and this is a good filter for me because I end the conversation, I say I'm done. How many views? And I'm just like, that's sorry. Like, I'm not here to fill your top of funnel. I feel like I come in somewhere else. I want to make content that when you get people in the top of your funnel, they're going to be successful. So I tend to think of developer education, developer experience, and pushing that message. But yeah, how many views am I going to get? I've got some content that's phenomenal that has 500 views. Some content that's dreadful and it has 50,000 views. Like, you never know where it's going to go. And that's my little rant about developer marketing. But
this is one of the things that people outside of marketing, I don't think, appreciate, is that a lot of marketing is educational, even outside of developer marketing. I'll broaden that statement and say that a lot of really high, so very few big purchasing decisions are made without like any educational sort of element to it, right? I don't go buy a car without looking into 5 or 10 other cars that are similar. At least that's not me. I mean, some people might go impulse purchase a car, but that's not how I do it, not how most people do it. And it's similar, it's like adopting technology at a big organization. You know, again, you're a big company and you're thinking about using Kubernetes. That's a big decision, and it requires a lot of people to be on board and a lot of budgets to line up and a lot of different conversations to be had. So education needs to be a huge part of that process, that sale, whatever. If you want to call it part of sales marketing, great. If you want to call it education or support, great. But at the end of the day, I think this is something that like you can't overstate in marketing, that just education needs to be part of the whole funnel. But I agree with you. I think we've always tried to focus on the clients who are less about the transactional nature of like, how many clicks can I get? How many views can I get tomorrow? And more about the long-term relationship with users and developing trust. And that just takes time. And there's kind of no substitute for that.
Yeah, there's also a long tail on the work that we do as well. Like, fine, you might get 10,000 views in the first month, but what's that content going to get over the next 2 years, 5 years, etc.? If you build the content right, it has a long life. And I think that's really important. Obviously, technology doesn't stand still, and Kubernetes might not be a thing in 10 years or 5 years. I doubt it. But yeah, you got to... That content has a lot of life in it, yeah, regardless of what views it gets in the first few weeks.
How's the business going so far? I mean, and you can use whatever metrics you kind of think about as success or not success. Is it going where you thought it would in the first couple of years?
It's changing a lot. I'm still changing. Like I said, the first year it was you give me money, I'll give you time, and that was okay. It's now gone through a really big change, at least for me anyway. Where I want to spend a lot of my time I've built a lot of systems for the Rawkode Academy. Every time you see a YouTube video go live, I mean, I've barely done anything. It's all automated, which I love. And I want to be able to do more of that. So I've started taking on partners, which people still get content, but it's definitely not exchanging time for money. The plan being that I've realized, in fact, I'm going to back up a little bit. YouTube sucks. That's the whole statement. 5 years I've been doing this now. We've got over 1 million views, and I can't tell you one single thing about anyone who has viewed that content. YouTube tells me that they're mostly male. Okay, fine. Text disproportionately male. It's not fair. I already knew that. It gives me an age demographic, which is pretty much just everyone's over 20. Okay, I expect that too. You're not telling me anything new there whatsoever. And then it gives me a geographic breakdown. That's all you get from YouTube. So I made this big decision again for me, was I'm going to stop using YouTube. Now, I'm not cutting my content out immediately because it's still super valuable to me. I still want people to find the content. But I realized that I need them to come to the Rawkode Academy. Right? The Rawkode Academy it shouldn't be just a YouTube channel. So we launched a new website. It's still very much a work in progress. I ship the new features every week. That's my kind of mission. And now I know how long people have been in software development for. I know what projects they're interested in. I know what languages they want to write in now, and I know what languages they want to write in 6 months' time. I'm building up all of this information that helps me plan content, work out who should be a partner with me, because I know there's a demand for content on certain things. And I'm trying to build a more engaged, fun place for people to come and just talk about technology. My business is in a huge state of flux right now as I'm doing this transition. But I would say that the business had a very, very successful year one, to the point where I overcommitted, was late on all my deliverables for every single client after the 6 month. And that's when I started to realize this change has to happen. So it was a forced change, but also a moment of realization of that I'm building the wrong thing. I'm not trying to just give people content for paid for products, etc. I actually want to do so much more. So there's a lot happening. But yeah, successful year one. Year two, also successful to the point where, there's money in the bank. I don't have the runway I want. I'd love to have 18 months, but you got to work towards that. I'm probably at like 3 months right now, which sucks, especially during a state of flux. That sucks that I'm in a state of flux. Yeah, that's great. But I know that I'm on the right path now because I can feel it. I'm enjoying it a lot more. I'm enjoying building out things, and I'm getting really excited about the content as well. Well, I don't want to paint it as like the last 12 months of my realization and making things better is all success, right? Like I took a small pivot over here where I thought that I would just take on like 3 big clients that gave me a huge chunk of money and split my time that way. But that doesn't work either. It was a painful pivot that didn't work. I still have the clients, which is great, but the demands on that are a lot less. They've bought into the new model, which I'm very fortunate for. But yeah, there was a few months where I was like, crap, like I've got all this content for 3 clients to do now, and it's all very derivative. And how do you tell the same story 14 times in a new way? And
do you do all the production, all the recording, all the writing of scripts and everything yourself, or do you have other people you've sliced this out and doled certain parts out to? How's it work?
Yeah, I'm pretty much a one-man business, and I know I should be fixing that. I should be getting people to do edits and stuff like that. And I did try. Like for 9 months last year, I worked with a really great video editor, but I found they're not telling the same story that I wanted to tell, and that's because they don't understand the products. And maybe this is just me being too much of a perfectionist with what I'm doing, but it's really hard. Like I would love to say I don't have to do social media anymore. I would love to say I'm not doing video editing anymore. I'd love to say that all of these X, Y, and Z tasks could be done by other people. But my content is so specifically niche. The companies I work with is so specifically niche that you can't just ask a random video editor, as good as they may be, or maybe I found the wrong people, I don't know. But it's really difficult to give someone a video and say, can you edit this down to 10 minutes when there's 45 minutes of content and they don't know which parts are important. They don't know which time, something that happened time and time again is they would edit out mistakes. And I'm like, no, that one's really important. And they're like, but you got it wrong. And I'm like, yeah, but everyone's going to get that bit wrong. We need to leave that in. Social media as well. I tried outsourcing that. I've tried so many people on Upwork, and every time it's been an absolute failure. And again, maybe I shouldn't be looking on Upwork. But saying, hey, here's a video, it's 2 hours long on Cilium CNI. Fantastic product, all about eBPF and rewriting the control plane in Rust and all this amazing stuff. Craft me some tweaks. They have no idea what is novel from that video. It's just impossible. I also found, and I don't know if you've had the same, but every time I have tried to outsource something, you can just tell when people are just running it through AI and automating the process and giving you it back. And that's not what I can do that myself. Like, I don't need someone else to be doing that. So again, I'm probably the problem, but I have not been able to successfully outsource anything that my business does. And I hate that. I would love some help. But I'm not in a position where I can go and hire another me, unfortunately. And I don't want to hire students. I know a lot of people go down that route. But I just feel like I don't want to say they're taking advantage of students. The students are probably getting a lot from it. But it's not the method I want to go down, not the route I want to take.
I mean, this is, again, one of the fun parts about entrepreneurship is that there's no right and wrong answer. And so I don't immediately listen to somebody who's got a one-person business, or maybe ends up being you and some fractional people helping with some things part-time. Like, I don't think that's a bad business, right? It all depends what your goals are and what you want to spend your time doing. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's plenty of good examples. Have you read, I think it's called Business of One, but there's plenty of good examples of like entrepreneurs who do that kind of soloist type work, where they essentially have figured out a way to raise leverage on their own personal time enough that they can do most everything themselves, and then it works. So I don't think it's bad. I think it's just, you got to decide what it is you want to do, and then where you want to, because managing people and building processes, to theoretically have them take over big pieces of this is certainly possible, but it, like you said, it may be too expensive. It might be price prohibitive given the size you're at. I mean, that was the biggest problem we ran into at Draft. I remember the first time I got somebody else to write an article, it was terrible. And I had to rewrite the whole thing the night before it was due, so it's not fun, like going through that several times in the first year, not fun at all. But for me, that was kind of part of the design around the business model, was make sure that ultimately I'm only going to stick with this if I don't have to write everything forever. So I knew I had to get there eventually.
If I could triple what my revenue is and bring on great, I know a lot of developers with 10 years experience that I meet at every single conference, and I'm always like, I would love for you to do content for me, but they want their developer salary. They want that $200,000 per year. So, when I get to that stage, if I get another 10 partners on the website, then yeah, I would bring in everybody I know and say, let's build something truly brilliant. But right now, it's just me and me.
Yeah. So tell me about the partnership model, because this is really interesting. My agencies are a little more like time for money type or deliverable for money type models. And so that I know how that works, where we're creating content that the client's going to then go put on their own site or in their own channels. Yours is different though. The partnership model is kind of a cool one. So walk me through that. How's it work today?
I mean, I'll just give you the sales pitch and then you can cut me the check after this podcast.
Perfect.
But,
Yeah.
So I basically decided that this has to be the way that it goes, just because I need to free up my time to get back to making content that I love. And the only way to do that is to convince people to give me money for nothing. That is essentially the partnership model. So the first plan we have, and all of them are Scottish themed. I'm from Scotland. I know my Scottish accent isn't on show today, but I find people can't. I'm just going to keep going to the segues. The first 12 months of my YouTube channel, the first comment every single time was, I have no idea what you're saying. And I just developed this very basic work English voice that now even my wife is like, can you stop talking to me like that? But yeah. So the first plan is, it's Scottish themed. All the plans are Scottish themed. The first one is called a nip. Do you know what a nip is?
No, don't know that.
Yeah, so if you were at a wedding with a Scottish person, they would have their hip flask with scotch, whiskey.
Just like a small drink.
And a nip is just, you give somebody a wee nip. So that's the first plan. It's $12,000 per year. And that's the supporter level, right? The companies just give you that and say, okay, that's fine. They get a quarterly live stream, which means someone from their team joins me once every 3 months and we show off something cool that they're working on, other companies doing or something like that. That's it. I like that. I wish I could have 30 people at that level. Probably not going to happen, but it would be amazing. We then go up a bit, and this is where I'm starting to give off some time for money. They then got a dram. So a dram is where you have a shot of whiskey. That's what you go to the bar and you'd order, you wouldn't say a dram, but it is a dram. And you get the quarterly webinars as well. However, I give you 32 hours of consultancy that year. And all the partnerships are a 12-month commitment. I'm not a salesperson. I'm not going to spend my life chasing new people every 3 months or whatever. So it's a 12-month commitment, take it or leave it. And to be honest, I haven't found people complaining like that. And I think that's maybe just in part because I have built good relationships over the years and I feel like I'm well respected. Maybe that'll change at some point. I hope not, actually. That's a horrible thing to think. Yeah, people aren't going to respect me anymore. Shit. No. That gives you 32 hours. And all of my services are available. I can help companies in so many ways. And again, I'm trying not to toot my own horn, but I do developer marketing. I do developer education. I'm a really strong engineer with Kubernetes. So whatever I can do to help you, we'll work it out. And I keep that conversation open. At the top of the partnership page of my website, it'll say here are the things I can offer. And I'm happy to do whatever helps. So we then go on to a blend, a good old blended whiskey. That's at $48,000 a year. It gets you 64 hours over the year, and it'll get you mid-roll on all free, unsponsored content for the year. Well, yeah. So this is where things get tricky because I can't do mid-rolls on YouTube unless I am the mid-roll and I do it live, which I am not going to do because then it's in perpetuity. So this is where my platform comes in. So we're currently migrating everything over to the website. I've written my own video player based on Cloudflare's Stream, where I can do pre-rolls and mid-roll on all content. And yeah, it's going to be awesome. Not launched yet, but we're weeks away, no longer months away, which I'm very excited about. And then the top of the tier is the malt plan. Everybody loves a good old single grain, single barrel, single malt. 96,000 per annum. And it gets you more time plus the pre-roll on all the content. So I'm still selling time for money, but it's much more in my favor.
That's such an interesting hybrid, though. I think a lot of, you have this unique, not only skill set, but also this audience that you've built that has value, right? And that's what you're kind of monetizing with the webinars and the mid-rolls and all the ads and stuff too. And it's a really interesting, combination of services or whatever offerings, which I think is cool. And I think it's part of probably why you can kind of make something like this work. It's just that, not many other freelance DevOps engineers or even DevRel people would have the same like audience built up already and, ability to kind of draw people immediately. So that's really good on you for kind of using what you've got.
Yeah. The long-term plan is obviously not to keep giving people time. I've offered this time as part of each plan for the first 12 months because it's a safety net, right? I am building the platform as people partner with me. So they're not getting all that data. Obviously I'm not going to give anyone data that's not anonymized, et cetera, right? But people want to know how many people are interested in their technology. They want to know what languages they want to learn so they can prioritize SDKs. They want to know how many people have viewed their content. And if people that register for the Rawkode Academy opt in to receive messages from partners, then they've got a new top of funnel play if they want to. So the time is there until June next year. And then we'll see when I finish the platform, June or July next year, maybe August, we'll see. And then it goes away. And then the plans are just to be a part of the platform.
This is, again, it's a unique model. So I kind of want to double in on this and hear if you've heard others like this. So a lot of creators on YouTube struggle with monetization because the views you have to have pretty high to start to make real money from it, right? And so, but you've kind of figured out a way around that, and not only building your own platform, but even if you were on YouTube, having this model that is like partly you're sponsoring plus partly you're getting consulting. Have you seen that in other places or other creators kind of doing that yet?
No, I'm in my own little bubble. I'm not really a member of other creative groups. I'm not in any Discords. I'm not having this is just me seeing what the next step is. It's like software development, right? We iterate, you make a change, you test it. If it doesn't work, you go back. Will I still be doing this model in 12 months' time? I have no idea. But right now, the partnership model has bought me enough of a runway to really double down on the platform and make it work because I feel the value is in that data. And the sooner I get away from YouTube and I control that platform vertically, I can do whatever I want. I can build new services to do whatever I want. I can capture whatever data I want. Now, I'm in the EU. There's GDPR. I'm never going to do anything. And my audience is my number one. They're who are important to me, right? It's not the partners. So I'm never going to sacrifice that community, that engagement that I have for a quick buck. Everything is going to be opt-in. You can just say, I don't want to hear anything, and that's fine. But the data is still valuable. Even just being able to say, we have 10,000 people that want more content on Ngrok, on Microsoft Azure, on Google Cloud, it doesn't matter. That data is worth something to these companies. I mean, these companies spend a lot of money sponsoring and being members of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. And I want to convince them that I can give them more value than that. Now, let's talk about my sales pitch, because I think that's kind of important. I'm not in sales. I'm really, really, really bad at it. But what I realized, being a developer advocate for the best part of 10 years, I've stood in a lot of booths at conferences. And these companies are spending 20,000 on the lower end to 100,000 on the larger end, depending on how big their booths are, to get scans over 2 days to 5 days, depending on the conference. We call them leads, right? But really, it's just people that want free swag. So you've got 500 email addresses from people that have no interest in your product whatsoever. And again, these companies are paying tens of thousands up to hundreds of thousands for these booths.
Not to mention the cost of sending all these people. Because I know exactly what you're talking about. You know, you go to KubeCon and somebody's got 5 to 10 people to man a booth, and they rotate through. And like, I just think like not only the $20,000 booth they paid for, $50,000 booth, but the other 10 to 15, 20,000 that they spent on traveling these people, and the lost time and other things they could have been doing. You know, there's so much there.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got 5 engineers there who are earning $300,000 per year, and you've got 4 days of their time there, like all this cost adds up.
We can do the math. It's a lot.
Yeah, and then I was like, you know what? And plus, they have to be like KubeCon is an example, right? You can only sponsor KubeCon if you're a member organization. So there's that $20,000, $40,000 depending on your tier every year as well. And I'm like, this is not viable. There's not a good return on investment. So my sales pitch is really like, can I deliver your company more over 12 months than you would get on 4 days of KubeCon? And the answer is a resounding yes. Even if I do almost nothing, I can deliver more than that, because of those 500 leads, or say you're lucky, right? You got 1,000 people scanned at your booth over 5 days. Less than 1% of them are even going to open the email, and even a fraction of that are going to buy your product at some point in time. So the bar for me to beat is low. However, the sales is hard, right? Because marketing teams are so invested in this model now that they're not really willing to listen to an alternative strategy. So I'm still working on that, but that's my key premise. It's like, I can deliver over 12 months much more than you can get from that conference, and I just need them to believe it and to buy into it.
One of the things I always find, it's really hard in selling a B2B service to get someone to open up a new line item on their budget. So in other words, if the middle, manager of developer marketing at some big company has $100,000 marked off for KubeCon, they don't have to go back to their boss and argue for that. It just is a default. It's built in, right? And there's so much momentum behind those budget line items at the really big companies that they just kind of like do the same thing until forever. Like they don't change it, right? And it's stupid. Like you and I can objectively look at it and be like, okay, you could spend half that money with David and probably get more return. That said, that middle manager has to put their ass on the line to get that, right? And so they have to kind of like they have to be either persuasive enough or really drawn to it enough or experimental enough or kind of, enterprising enough, whatever it is. I mean, you can obviously find those people, but there's just sort of like, it makes it a little bit harder. And we see that too in content, where clients they've been doing, let's say, very low volume content and very focused on, one specific use case or something for their product. And we're like, well, there's all these different use cases, all these different things, but like they just can't get expanded budget, right? There's just a hard limit set by somebody, and they're going to keep doing the same thing until they end of time.
Interesting, like budgets are obviously important. And one thing I noticed as a consultant, right, before I started my own business, when I was actually doing SRE and Kubernetes and stuff for people, is that when I priced myself at $200, $300 an hour, I never got a lot of contracts, because I've got a hypothesis, but I'm not sure, right? But when I raised my price to $1,000 an hour, I got more deals. And it's because of the budget, because when you're at a certain price range, you come out of like either a marketing budget or an engineering budget, and those are defended, right? Those are castles that people need to protect. Once you get so high, you become like the CTO budget, and things get a lot easier because you don't come out the regular, middle management tier. You go, it's really weird. And I've never really understood it, but I think that's the problem. So I wonder if I just like change my pricing plans from like 96,000 a year for malt to like $250,000, maybe it would be easier. I don't think so, but maybe it would be easier.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where this is part of the reason we removed our prices publicly is that I like to go toss big numbers out occasionally. And so we'll, if we've got a sales call with a big company, we might put together some really big proposal, and it'll include other things and kind of a higher level of service. And we know their onboarding is going to be more, intrusive. And we know there's a lot of things that are challenging about working with them. But at the same time, like, it's a good chance to throw a big number out there and see what happens. And if you get a no, you say, okay, maybe we can negotiate, move some things around. But honestly, like, I think experimentation on pricing is probably I mean, it's not necessary, but it is fun and interesting if you do want to get there. And I've personally found it, because again, like you, I'm not a salesperson either. So like I kind of I don't have rules. So I just like, throw stuff out there and see. And I think that probably serves us to a point. Now it's good that I have a sales team that does that, because they probably have more rules. There's good things. Our founder sales are kind of like this. It's this unique spot where you can raise prices every month just to try it. And you can do weird things. You can try custom, setups for people. But anyway, I mean, just something that, I've observed.
Yeah, I mean, the first year of the Rawkode Academy, when I was selling time for money, we started off at $150 for a minute of video. And, when we stopped doing that model, we were up to $300 per minute of video. You've got to experiment with prices because you're leaving too much off the table. And I learned that the hard way. Even my hourly rate was too low when I started doing this as well. And it wasn't until I reached out to some other people that were doing this, that published books and stuff. And I was like, can I have half an hour of your time? And you know what? Just asking that question, surprisingly, so many people said yes. I can't believe the amount of people that gave me time just to talk about me stupidly trying to build a business. But yeah, everybody just said, raise your prices. You're too low. In fact, you're so low that it's going to be harder to get deals. And it goes back to my old consultant days as well. I think that is just a solid hypothesis. So.
I think this is like one of the drumbeat of advice I throw out to new entrepreneurs all the time is basically just raise your prices. And almost always it's just necessary. And exactly what you said, I get 1,000 of these emails every day. It's, we are a web development shop. We want to help you build your next app, and we'll give you a week for free. And I'm like, well, how bad is their quality, and how much are they like struggling if they have to give away their service, which costs them money, for free just to try to get new clients? Like, it just immediately makes me assume they're terrible. And like, I would never try that, anyway, it's important observation is like price is it's a psychological thing. And when your price is higher, you're perceived to be more valuable, especially if it comes with a personal recommendation or referral from somebody, and the fact that you've worked with well-known companies that they've seen and heard of before. It's detrimental to you to go too low there.
Yeah, if you go low, you're not seen as an expert. Even if you are, you got to get those big numbers up so people to go, oh, he must be an expert.
Yeah. I mean, you want like half of the people you have sales calls with to go, ooh, that's a little high. Like that's like telling you, okay, good, I've hit a limit. Like,
well, I've actually found that filters out the wrong type of client as well. Like, I spoke to someone early on in his business, and he says, you've got to have your fuck you figure. For the company that you're like, I don't want to work with you, but if you pay this, sure, I'll do it. And it also just weeds out the clients that are going to be very difficult to work with, I find. And the ones that just want the 10,000 views or 100,000 views or whatever. Raising the prices gets you, I try not to kind of just cast a wide net here and say like the right type of people, but you're working with the people that understand the value in what you're doing more, that they're willing to pay it. And it's not just about clickbait titles and, eyeballs on a page. It's important, but there's a grander mission there.
Cool. Well, I could geek out on pricing all day, but we're going to keep ourselves within our allotted time here, David. Okay, let's talk quickly about feelings, because we talked about this a bit at the beginning, getting started, and the fear, the uncertainty. You've got things stabilized a bit. But I imagine there's still the highs and lows. Like, what's been any lowlights in the last like the last year, maybe that places where it just felt rough, or like, I don't know what I'm doing, anything like that? Has anything stuck out to you?
When I was in the first one, maybe not the last year, but when I was in my first year, I took on a lot of clients that just didn't fit with what I was trying to show. The technology didn't interest me whatsoever. Security was a very fast growing trend in like 2023, 2022, later end. So there were all these security related products, proprietary ones, not even open source. And, they were willing to pay. But at the end of the day, I spent too much time really just hating everything I was doing. So that was really low. I also tried to cheat with my business, and not cheat's a really harsh word. I wanted to build this platform. I knew that my future was in having something where the content was all me, the data was all me, and I could get back to doing what I loved. And I'm a developer, but I went, you know what? I could do this in a week with Wix.com. And I did it. I built my website, and I was stranded on it for months. I hated it so much. But I had this horrible, slow, painful Wix.com website where I tried to throw on forums, and I had a store where people could buy swag and all this bullshit. It was just all a distractor from what I should actually be doing. And it was trying to speed up the process of getting where I had to be. And just looking at that website every day made me hurt. It was awful. And I had to get back to finding joy in what I was doing again. And that's when I know there's not always going to be developers listening to this, right? But I over-engineered this shit out of this new platform. It is cloud native through and through. It is microservices to an extreme. I have an architecture that I don't think anyone else has ever done before. And it has been so much fun. Now, has it taken me 6 months longer than it should have? Yes. But I now have a backlog of content I can make on this architecture, like to the point where every single column in a database is a different microservice. Like, that is how far I pushed this. But there's a lot of great gains to doing that way. I never have to worry about database migrations. They don't exist anymore. And I haven't lost anything with this architecture. And if anything, I think I've done something truly unique and cool. And I'm looking forward to when I have enough partners that I can sit down and do hours and hours of content on what I built, because I think it's generally going to be interesting. I also think, this random segue, but I think what I built for my platform could be used by any creator. And I'm looking forward to in the future being able to open that up to other people and saying, hey, here's this really cool thing I built. Go and use it for yourself.
What's a book you've read in the past year that has influenced you, especially maybe from the business side of things? I imagine you probably read mostly, well, I don't know. What do you read? More technical or more business stuff? And then, is there any business books that have stuck out to you in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the type of person that buys every business, self-help, and technology book in the world and then puts them on a bookshelf, and I haven't read them.
Puts them on the shelf back here, like my wall of shame of books that are looking at me, like telling me to read them. Yeah.
Well, my office went on fire in March, and I lost all my books. I've only started replacing them.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that was a low point, right? My entire building went on fire.
No kidding. Oh, my God. Was everybody in the office okay? Was anybody hurt, or was it?
Yeah, nobody was hurt. It happened in the middle of the night, but I lost all my computers, all my cameras, all my audio interface, my entire business. I generally put out a tweet asking if anyone wanted to hire me. I thought it was the end. And I don't know why that didn't occur to me, but it's behind me now, and I tend to be quite positive and look forward. But yeah, that was a pretty low point of the last film.
No kidding.
But I've looked at it as a reboot. To me, it's been like, okay, like everything I had there cost me hundreds of thousands. I'm not going to spend that to get it all back. My insurance did give me a nice big check, but I learned a lot of lessons in all those expenses that I was able to really hone it in when I replaced my setup. And now I'm in a much better space, better equipment. So yeah, that sucked. But I don't read a lot of books. I'm a video person and an audio person. I listen to a ton of podcasts. I watch far too much YouTube content from other technologists. That's just the way that I like to learn. I'm also very tactile. So for me, I can't read a book and be hacking on something. But if I'm watching a demo of something, I've got a terminal open and I'm doing the opposite of what they're doing to see where it breaks. And that's just how I learn, which is not a great way to learn business, which is probably why I've made so many mistakes over the last 2 years. But yeah, it's how I'm wired. It's how I work.
It is what it is. There's no right way. Again, I think this is where entrepreneurship gets really fun and open-ended, and it's hard, but also liberating. It took me a couple of years to kind of accept the open-endedness of it, that there is no right answer. Because I think in a typical job, quote unquote, there's a career path, right? And it's very like kind of linear. There's maybe a couple branches you get to pick, like, but that's it. And then you get in entrepreneurship and like it is completely open-ended once you've gotten past like survival mode. You're like, you like you're in a spot, I'm in a spot where like our day-to-day is covered. We're making enough money to live on. Now it's like, what do you want to do? Pick your own. There's just a million options. It's almost harder in a way than because it's so open-ended.
Yeah, definitely. It's equal parts fun, equal parts hell. Yeah, but going back to the book thing, I will say that about 10 or 12 years ago, I read The 4-Hour Work Week, How to Make Friends and Influence People, and Eat the Frog, right? Now, I read them and I thought, oh yeah, this is really cool. And then I realized that they're all full of shit. And I'm sure they're good books, right? And people have taken a lot out of them. But to me, they're just a way of manipulating people into certain situations. It's about being able to not necessarily control people, but definitely influence them. And it's all about pretense and falseness. And it just put me off. I stopped reading all that style of material, which is probably not. If I am going to read a book, it's fiction. I'll sit and read Dune. I'll read anything, sci-fi. But yeah, I definitely don't spend a lot of time reading self-help business improvement books and stuff. And again, I've got a lot to learn on sales and marketing, but I just can't bring myself to put up with all the horse shit that goes through it.
It's one of those things where, like, again, I think entrepreneurs, we tend to have a very low threshold of putting up with stuff we don't want to do. It's kind of one of I would say it's a weakness that we turn into a strength, right? Like and this is kind of true. I imagine you run this as an engineer. The things you don't want to do, you build a way to automate or you just stop doing. And I have always like felt that way about running my own business too. It's like, hey, look, if I like reading business books, I'm going to do it. But there's certain times when I don't like it and I'm not going to do it. And I'm not apologetic about it. That's just the way it is. So I think it's okay to be any way you want to be, but you're going to take the pros and cons with it.
Yeah. I mean, I think as developers, people always say that developers hate marketing. And it's just because we can tell when people are blowing smoke up our asses, I think is the thing. Like when you go to a conference, right, and you meet the salesperson from a booth and they say your name every 14 seconds as if to remind you what your name is. And you're like, I know what you're doing.
I know you read How to Win Friends and Influence People on the way here, and you remember to say my name 60 times. But.
Yeah, exactly. It's like my favorite thing for me to hear is not my own name, honestly. And I think developers are like that. We can smell through the marketing fluff, the sales fluff. And that's why I think, especially my content, make the technology sing. Focus on what is great about the technology, not about influencing people or anything like that. So yeah. Can't stand it.
Last question I have for you. If we check back with you in a year, David, where do you hope to be with the company overall? Any big goals on the horizon?
I want to prove that the model works. I approach this like test-driven development, right? I'm making assumptions on the architecture. I'm making assumptions on what the business is going to do. And I'm hoping that in 3 months' time, I'll have proven that partners are getting value. It will prove that developers will register for the website because I'm giving them value. Again, the people that watch my content are the most important thing to me. I need to make their lives easier. And I'm hoping that by doing that, I get the data that I need, the materials that I need to prove the partner model is useful to them more so than a conference. And that in 12 months' time, I just need to prove that works. I need to have a lot of members on the site watching the content and partners that believe. That's my most important mission.
Love it. I'm excited to check back in with you and see how that goes. And then last but not least at all, David, where can people follow up with you or find you? I know you're on LinkedIn and Twitter. I've got those links. And Rawkode Academy, right, is the website?
Yeah, Rawkode Academy if you want to see what we're building. GitHub.com/Rawkode Academy if you want to help me with what I'm building. Like I said, the architecture is cool. People should be checking it out. And of course, YouTube.com/Rawkode Academy is where all the content is.
Right. And that's Rawkode with a K.
Rawkode with a K, yeah, R-A-K. That's always fun when I tell people my email address on the phone.
Right. I have to make that distinction as Karl with a K. I have to always say that because, I assume there's a Karl with a C, Karl Hughes out there. Anyway, but yeah.
Yeah, and I won't bother sharing socials. I'm on them all as Rawkode. Whether I'm still on all those socials by the time this publishes, I don't know. I'm really fed up with algorithms and everything. So
that's a whole nother topic. I feel like a lot of people, this is a trend. We're getting this swing. We had a swing towards social media is great and all this, for many years. And I think we're kind of getting the swing back the other way. It's like, this is not great and nobody loves it. So, but that's a whole nother topic. David, it was great to speak with you. We have a lot of, this is fun because we have a lot of like common kind of background and interests. So I love to geek out. We will put all the links and good stuff in the show notes so people can follow up with you. And thanks again for your time. We'll check back in with you soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for watching this episode of Retain Trust. If you like this one, give it a thumbs up and subscribe on YouTube. It takes 2 seconds and it helps others find out about the show. And if you have questions or suggestions for a future episode, leave a comment. See you next time.